Hey there, welcome to episode 163 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 5:04 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time here in the Greater Vegas area on Friday, April 10, 2026. We normally publish new episodes of Cafe Genius Impresarios on Friday in the morning. Surely it is Friday morning somewhere, right? Close enough. Today's title and topic: Entrepreneur Net. Entrepreneur Net. Entrepreneur is a weird. It's a long word. So the network of stuff for entrepreneurs in Nevada, maybe elsewhere. Hopefully, if you're not familiar with Cafe Genius, let's start there. Cafe Genius is an entity that I started in January of 2022. It was literally started to facilitate the pitch workout room, which was, the idea was to encourage people with ideas. Maybe they didn't have a slide deck. Maybe they just were just sitting on the couch thinking. This is an opportunity to get up and start talking about it. So 5-minute presentation, sort of an open mic for startups. We kicked it off in January, like I said, 2022. And it was a tech alley feature. Started at 9 a.m. Every month. We didn't always have 6. We had 6 people, 10 minutes total, 5 minutes to pitch your idea, 5 minutes to get some constructive feedback on the idea, on the presentation. If you had a slide deck, did it look nice? Was it confusing? No slide deck? Did you tell a good story? Does it make sense? Is the idea interesting? All kinds of feedback, whatever it was. We basically kept loosening up the rules a little bit so that it was much more about what the individual was looking for. So even the 5-minute thing, it could be, you could do 9 minutes of presentation and 1 minute of feedback. We were starting at 9. The actual event starts at 10. So we were kind of a pre-show. So we had the 1 hour. Pitch Mingle was born from that. And some other things, including the Meetup Collaboratory, and then eventually in 2023, the Genius Roundtable. So it has become clear since we started this thing that a better understanding of entrepreneurial endeavors, the entrepreneurs that are attempting to accomplish them, and then also the innovators. Sometimes an innovator is an entrepreneur, sometimes the entrepreneur is an innovator, etc. Entrepreneurs and innovators are trying to accomplish their goals here in the Greater Vegas area. What if we took more time to better understand what works and what doesn't from the bottom up, so to speak? Not looking down on Nevada, Vegas, Clark County, Vegas, from an authoritative viewpoint, but looking up from where people are trying to accomplish these things and seeing what's out there, how it works, what we can understand about it, and what we can do to make it work better, function better. So Cafe with 2 F's and no accent is an homage to the Cafe Centro coffee shop, of all things, in San Francisco. It used to be located in the South Park, very near the Oracle Ballpark. It was where startups start. Unfortunately, it did not quite survive post-pandemic. So that's unfortunate. I had been to the Cafe Centro several times. It was a cool spot. It did live up to its name. There were a few startups that started there, and it was a cool spot to meet up. An actual park, actual grass, actual trees, actual picnic, park bench, picnic tables. Right, cool spot. So it was a shame that it shut down, but it does inspire, I hope, the notion that comfortable meetup and co-work spots can make a difference. And we certainly have those in Vegas. I've said many times that we definitely need some Cafe Centros. And we do have them. I don't know that people know that that's what they are, but it turns out that's what they are. Genius, for the Genius lunches that used to take place in the downtown project sphere, ad hoc gatherings during lunchtime for people who were too busy to spend an entire day to get free food. So they were totally useful for catching up, some human interaction, some gossip, some updates, who's doing what, how is it going, etc. So Cafe Genius, named for those two things. I had to come up with a name quickly. It's grown on me quite a bit. And then Impresarios, this audio program, Cafe Genius Impresarios. Impresarios are the people making it happen, doing the stuff. Impresarios with 2 S's is a less common but equally correct spelling. So Cafe with 2 F's, no accent. Cafe Centro had an accent on the E, so it's easier to type for the casual observer. Cafe, no accent, easy to type. Cafe Genius Impresarios, here we are. We could have guests someday. We used to have guests. We'll do that again at some point. So yeah, let's get started with EntrepreneurNet. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary. It's 1 sentence and then a cheat for a second, a 1-word sentence. And then we have a lot of links today, the usual 2 for the audio program itself. And then should I count? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hey, I can still count. 9 related links for today's episode. Nodes on the net. So yeah, let's get started. The summary of today's episode. There are a few things entering the interconnected net here in Nevada that are worth a mention now, and continued attention paid through the year and beyond. Definitely on the agenda if we can get Initiative 2026 moving. Hint. Cafe Genius homepage, Cafe, CAFFE, Genius, GENIUS.org. There's more than this audio program. I alluded to some of these things at the beginning of the show. So this particular website is as ugly as my other websites, but it needs a little bit of extra attention. It's not just this audio program. If we ever do have guests again, there would be guest links, your host, profile page, linking everything, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. That is where you will find links to all of my audio programs. It's a free-form profile page, so it's functional. Buy Me a Coffee is a common platform. People understand what it is and so on. You don't need to spend any money there. Don't worry. But you will find links to all of my audio programs in various places, YouTube, the Spotify profile page, the corresponding homepage, if there is one, and there is, for all of them. And the Buy Me an Update audio program was initially published exclusively at buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo/posts. Now, because this is the modern world, it is published there first. Buy Me an Update. It's named for the Buy Me a Coffee site. In fact, it's not affiliated, just the name. So Buy Me an Update is then published in the usual places, just like all of my other programs. So you can subscribe to the RSS feed and all the other usual stuff. Those are the program links. Those are in every episode. For today, we're talking about entrepreneur nodes, services, and support organizations and the like. This is just tip of the iceberg, but these are the ones that are sort of gaining some attention and traction, or they've been around for a while, but they're interconnecting. So we'll start off with the often mentioned many times, the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, LVGEA. I'm not going to read the links for each one because that's why I typed them or copy pasted them. That's why they're in the episode description. So the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, we've talked about that organization many times. They have a counterpart in Washoe County, the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada. If you've ever heard of EDAWN, that's what that is. The Nevada Economic Development Association, what do they call it? Nevada EDA, NevadaEDA.org. That is a new organization that is essentially a joint venture between LVGEA and EDAWN. It's aimed at economic development professionals, so it's not for the casual person. Is that what? Wait, is that? Let me verify something really quickly here. Looking for what is it called? Developers Association, not Development Association. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Economic Development Authority, Nevada Economic Developers Association. So I don't want to confuse those. So Nevada EDA. This will be interesting to see. It's basically connecting the two population centers of the state. Hopefully, by implication, they're inviting economic development professionals from around the state in the what I will later call the flyover country inside Nevada. The Nevada Go Ed Business Resources page The GOED is the Nevada Governor's Office of Economic Development. So they have business resources page. It's actually kind of interesting. It's yet another thing that you have to go hunting for. So, I mean, you can find it if you search for it, but you have to know to search for it. Business resources, all manner of information. The Nevada GOED Office of Entrepreneurship was established a couple of years ago. Office of Entrepreneurship. Right to Start is a new thing, a couple of years old. It still smells new though. Right2start.org. That's like a national effort, and we'll get into that a little bit. America the Entrepreneurial is very new. It's a nonprofit organization, 501c3 national organization that has it's started in line with the 250th anniversary of the formation of the United States, and it focuses on making entrepreneurialism great again, I guess. Yeah, that didn't sound right either. But Nevada is involving itself in that too. They're inviting states and cities and regions in general to join up. And as we will talk about briefly later, Nevada has been a founding state for America the Entrepreneurial and for Right to Start. So we'll touch on that later. Nevada the Entrepreneurial. Yes, there is a GOED page for Nevada the Entrepreneurial. So those do correspond. And finally, the Asset-Based Community Development Wikipedia page, which we will get to at the end here. And it's an important part of understanding the terrain in which entrepreneurs and innovators function and hopefully excel. If you've ever heard of the term asset map, that's kind of what we're talking about. So those are the links. It seems like a lot, but these are actually good resources to be aware of in general. The Right to Start has been around for a little while, and America the Entrepreneurial is kind of a new thing. Still coming together, still convincing cities and states to become involved proactively. Nevada's way ahead. We're there. Can we make use of it? That's the question. So let us begin. Top down. Most of what I talk about in our many episodes of Cafe Genius Impresarios concerns individual entrepreneurs and innovators and the startup and small business efforts they are considering or actually pursuing. I usually go with the terms aspiring, nascent, and then maybe something like going for it or in progress, something like that. I mean, once you are spending your time on your startup, you don't need labels. You're too busy for that. Or your small business. I am not a fan of top-down organizations for this sort of thing. I have been reading more lately about startup communities. I'm still not a fan of that terminology, but it is what it is. You're going to hear those sorts of things. Startup communities and so-called startup ecosystems. And this is not a good use of that term. So I go with entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, entrepreneurial innovator ecosystems. Yeah. Or the like. It's not an official term. So, take your pick of how you want to modify the words. The economic and social analog that is this ecosystem to the biological equivalent. The entire subject of ecology usually works in the world of living things, and there are several analogs. It's a good use of the term, but it's often misused, especially when they intermingle community and ecosystem. If we're going to have communities, they operate in the ecosystem context like a biome in a biological ecosystem. I did an entire episode about this recently. But it is important to understand the terrain, the government-driven infrastructure elements of the ecosystem, which are driven from the top down, often in the interest of some economic development plans, as is the case here in Greater Vegas and Nevada, in fact, across the state. And the state government level, most definitely, the GOED is pursuing that specifically. So not a problem. The government elements of an ecosystem are going to be top down. That's sort of the way it is. Initiative 2026 is a Cafe Genius thing. I've talked about this many times. I don't know if anybody's actually interested anymore, but which I need to mention more often than I have been so we can get rolling on it, is an effort to engage with top-down entities such as the ones we will talk about today and others, but from the bottom up. so that entrepreneurs and innovators pursuing startups and small businesses can have a collaborative voice, amplifying their authority concerning what is working and what might not be, to enable their efforts and efforts of others who will come after them. As I've mentioned before, we already held the first cohort of the Genius Roundtable in 2023 to accomplish some of these. There was much to be learned in how to pursue a second cohort with different structure and organization, with a broader scope and longer timeline, which we can talk about in the near future episodes. In a near future episode or episodes. Again, we've talked about it before. We'll talk about it again. So let's talk about Greater Vegas first. We center our discussions on the Greater Vegas area on this audio program, but ideally we can learn from other places and share what we learn with those other places, inside Nevada and beyond. Given the fun economy, and that's a trademark term for held by the UNLV Office of Economic Development since February of 2025 when it was granted, given the fun economy and its importance in Greater Vegas, it is important to consider how ongoing statewide and, of course, Vegas-specific economic diversification efforts are moving, in which directions, and how far along. These plans appear to originate in part at the LVGEA and possibly and most likely UNLV, the city and the county offices of economic development, and so on. Cafe Genius got its start mostly from the Pitch Workout Room, as I mentioned, but also from the first cohort of the Genius Roundtable, which was initiated as a counterpart to the statewide entrepreneurial ecosystem study and report that kicked off at the same time in January of 2023. Our organization was already around for a year for Pitch Workout Room and the Meetup Collaboratory and so on. I cannot tell you how important it is to have people who are living the current state of affairs around entrepreneurialism and innovation efforts in the Greater Vegas area, or anywhere really, actually involved in these things. And I believe our first cohort did shine some light on why that is important, despite the small size. I think we had, was it 7 or 8 people? I think it was seven total, or 7 plus me. It escapes me at the moment. Our first cohort did shine some light on why it's important, despite the small size of the pilot cohort and the first and the brief timeline that we were on. It was still important. It was a great learning experience. That's why cohort 2 is actually quite important and valuable. Big things have small beginnings, as the saying goes. I typed bit things. I speak of the LVGEA a bit now and then. And as I've pointed out, I think the LVGEA public message on entrepreneurs, startups, innovation, and pursuits along those lines has become muted over the last 2 years or so. Of course, our local news media does not do a great job covering this stuff. I've gone on at length about that, and I will continue to do so. But I have found even LVGEA messaging on the events like Global Entrepreneurship Week, which sadly is at the same time every year as Formula One racing here in Vegas. Guess which one wins? Guess which one is given all of the attention? Las Vegas Startup Week and other such events and resources to be, well, missing. They don't really emphasize those. They could mention on their website even. A TikTok video, I don't know. Is there a shift in focus towards more established entities which may appear in the list of key industries, which I've talked about before, published on their site? There's an actual key-industries page, which used to include a little bit more prominent mention of the entrepreneurial ecosystem or the presence of a startup community or whatever they were saying. Now it's diminished. The size and prominence not there. So maybe they have shifted their focus. That is my theory. And while there is still some information about pursuing a startup in Southern Nevada on their website, LVGEA's website, it is not so prominent anymore. I moved to the Vegas area when the downtown project was really getting going. August of 2013, technically August, really it was about mid-July. So I will suggest that I see fewer startup and small business resources today compared to back then, for what that's worth. In my mind, if the Greater Vegas area was truly the next Silicon Valley, a global innovation hub rivaling the San Francisco Bay Area, then I would see at least as much, even in a post-pandemic time. There should have, entrepreneurs are hard to stop. So there should be more, or at least as much energy, resources, collaboration potential, and so on. I'm not seeing it. That's always been a concern. I've mentioned that many times before. And then there are the Nevada parts. So LVGEA basically focuses on Southern Nevada. I include the link to EDON. To be honest, I do not know how robust the economic development efforts are in the middle part of Nevada, which is most definitely suburban and rural, with smaller towns, smaller populations, and so on. Still a part of the state, don't forget, and so the state economy. I suppose this area is considered flyover country, maybe. It would be interesting to see a more uniform fabric of connection, communication, and collaboration across the state. We can discuss that at the roundtable, perhaps. The roundtable focuses on Southern Nevada just from proximity, but certainly the more the merrier. There should be counterpart efforts around the state. Indeed. We're going to get to the GOED in the next section, but I did want to point out the newly formed NEDA, the Nevada Economic Developers Association, which is a joint effort between LVGEA and EDON and does invite other economic development professionals. So one would hope that people from around the state will participate. I think when they first made the announcement on the LVGEA website, I'm sure there was a similar announcement on EDON's website. There was no NEDA website. Now there is, but it's still coming soon. There is some content there. Like I should talk about getting websites launched, but I don't know if they've had their first meeting. I think they have an event coming up that invites economic development professionals to join in. Now you might gather why I mentioned the other parts of Nevada, because I always see these two entities, which are of course driving economic development in and around the state's two population centers, so LVGEA and EDON. But I do wonder what is going on in the rest of the state. Shouldn't we? Ideas are not bound by geography, population, age, or ability. So it might be interesting to at least be aware, to build a discovery infrastructure so that we could be aware, basically a directory, or more useful, the autonomous cohort tessellation, of which I've spoken a few times here, but mostly at the Innovate for Vegas Foundation audio program, Let's Innovate for Vegas, to enable the connection, communication, and collaboration possibilities we all might be missing out on. You never know where a good idea is going to come from. You never know where some innovative notion, some extremely worthy pursuit might come from an elementary school in the middle of Nevada. Some young person might have some cool idea, and you're not in Vegas, you're not in Reno, so whatever. That's wrong. So hopefully we're not letting that happen. This is a good spot to refer to that asset-based community development link I included. I kind of messed up the inflection on that sentence now that I'm looking at it again. This is a good spot to refer to that asset-based community development link I included in the link section. It was the final link. It's a Wikipedia page, which refers to asset maps and other things and why they are important and what sort of information they provide as part of a larger resource catalog representation. A directory is a simple version. It's a potential output. Once you have an asset map and basically a database filled in of the who's and the what's, you'll have a better sense of what your entrepreneurial ecosystems are like, your innovator ecosystems, your entrepreneurial innovator ecosystems, the communities and individuals that are functioning within them, the physical assets, the maker spaces, the co-work and meetup spaces, et cetera, et cetera. The assets in this context are skills, personalities, physical infrastructure, resources, and so on, under what is sometimes called a strengths and needs assessment. What do we have? What do we need? Which I'm confident is done at some scale in some places within Nevada. I just have not been able to locate where these pieces of information are published, if they are. I once located something called an asset map for Clark County, but it's not what I was hoping for. And it was more of a hype document prepared by some external consultancy. The asset map and all of this should be something that is actively updated and is the participation in forming the asset map should be coming from all involved in one way or another, right? Hey, update yourself in the asset map, add something new. Are we missing something, right? Google Maps figured this out. An asset map can be a actual geographical map. That's one version of that, but the data behind it should be able to generate other mappings of relationships between things, between the assets. The node graph, the network graph, right? How are nodes connected in a graph? That's basically what that is. They could be geographical, they could be functional areas, they could be interconnectedness, who knows whom, who's collaborating, where there's some openings, possibilities. Again, the needs could be more visible than they are. Where am I? The strengths and needs are almost like a SWOT. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunity. What is it? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and what is the T? Threats. Yeah. Hopefully it's not that dramatic. But yeah, what do we have? What do we need? And again, I think entrepreneurial innovators should be, might be here, but should be interested in the construction of such a data resource. I referred to the autonomous cohort tessellation. This is something related and is an initiative we have at the Innovate for Vegas Foundation for building up a mosaic tessellation. I had to have an ACT acronym. So autonomous cohort tessellation is ACT, Project ACT. But it's a mosaic or a representation. It may be visual or similar, a graph of other civic volunteer organizations and their projects around the world, perhaps. It would be, it is easily applied to construction and maintenance of an asset map and the entities that make it up, the nodes. So speaking of the state, let's talk about the GOED. The Governor's Office of Economic Development attempts to do what it says on the door. And while they have a lot of moving parts, there are people around the state, probably mostly in Vegas and Reno and Carson City. But, luckily the state has more people than that. I've yet to get a real sense of what, if there is, and what it might be, if there is a coherent plan. There is certainly not quite the cohesive messaging that is also essential, as I described in a previous episode of this very audio program about coherence and cohesion, or maybe it was cohesion and coherence, coherent cohesion, cohesive coherence, something like that. If I were going to give the GOED one piece of advice, it would be to create a front entrance and a path through all of the various offices and services and initiatives and things that are no longer available, and some sort of a plan concerning how all of them might fit together for different needs, and begin work on an asset map and connection across the state. But if the GOED won't do that, well, that's what entrepreneurs are for. Somewhat noteworthy, perhaps, Nevada was the first state to sign Right to Start into law in the summer of 2023, forming the Office of Entrepreneurship, which is one of the links in the links section, which fits nicely into statewide economic diversification efforts, and which may or may not even have a role to play in the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem of Greater Vegas. Maybe. Hopefully, I guess. I mean, if there are resources, we should be able to take advantage of them if it makes sense to do so. In theory, it sort of has to, I think, but the shutdown of the Nevada Office of Small Business Advocacy, for better or worse, shortly after the Trump administration came to power and pulled funding for these sorts of programs, we may need to keep an eye on how some aspects of the Right to Start and how the entrepreneurial participation plans actually roll out for real impact. So how does this stuff fit together from that top-down infrastructure? If you caught that, Nevada is a founding state, maybe the first of the founding states. It's not totally 100% clear. I think that is mentioned somewhere. Maybe Nevada was the first one. In the America the Entrepreneurial Movement, which is related to Right to Start, which is a nonprofit effort, it's 501c3, to recognize and celebrate and maybe even enable and encourage entrepreneurial energy, perhaps, across the country as part of the country's 250th birthday this summer, assuming we make it. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Thus, the link to the Nevada, the entrepreneurial section of the GOED site. So Nevada signed Right to Start law, signed a bill into law. If you visit the if you visit the entrepreneurial, Nevada, the entrepreneurial, I think they have, which links do I have up here? There's a place where it highlights that Nevada was the first one to, if you start with Nevada, the entrepreneurial, Nevada signed Right to Start bill. It was AB, I think it was AB Assembly bill number into law. I think it was July of 2023. It was 2023. So Right to Start has been around for a while. And then America the Entrepreneurial is still new. They're still having like founder introduction, meetup events, I think. So that's something to look into. We'll see where that goes. It's still too new to know, but yeah, we'll see. But Nevada certainly has made the effort at a state level. And then I believe Reno has become Reno the entrepreneurial. I don't know that Vegas has entered that fray. I don't know what's involved with signing up. I'm not an economic development professional working for a government or even in a public-private entity along those lines. So, but who knows? I think maybe I will try to join Nevada the Entrepreneurial at least and see what happens. But yeah, so these are efforts to kind of get people on the same page around the state and to make sure that people can start businesses. Now, I don't know, and I hope they don't. I don't know that Right to Start is doing the whole startups are not the same as small businesses, especially at that level. That's sort of silly. But we'll find out. So yeah, Nevada was the first to sign Right to Start legislation into law, and Nevada the Entrepreneurial founding state. So I'm either way, Nevada is attempting to be on the leading edge of these things. So I guess that's encouraging. Yeah, we'll see. If you caught that we are doing this, so Nevada is a founding state in the American movement of the entrepreneurial. So it's an effort to recognize and celebrate, as I said, and enable these things across the country. And yeah, so I think I went through all this, and hopefully you've recalled everything that I just said. So we're good. So about Right to Start and America the Entrepreneurial, these are still new. The Right to Start is not exactly new, but America the Entrepreneurial is definitely new, and they are affiliated. They are national efforts with local. It's not a chapter. Well, maybe it is a chapter situation. I don't know. But so there's Nevada the Entrepreneurial, Reno the Entrepreneurial, maybe Vegas the Entrepreneurial at some point. Part of America the Entrepreneurial. So some sort of a hierarchical structure, I guess. The Right to Start has been around for almost 3 years now, if I'm not mistaken. And America the Entrepreneurial seems as though it is still in a startup mode of sorts. At some point, I hope there's a little bit of an adjustment to the way directories and resources are organized, maybe with deep search capability to make the discovery process I mentioned as a need within Nevada. Maybe that can be implemented at a larger scale, can be enabled by tools like those I mentioned, Project Act. Well, that's for another time, but keep it decentralized. What I've noticed, if I can call an audible right now, what I've noticed is that these websites, the GoEd websites, the LVGEA, the EDON, other organizations, offices of advocacy, whatever, all these things, they probably are cross-linked, sort of. But for the most part, you're kind of left to your own devices to find things. You sort of have to know where they start, where they are, what they're related to. Why would I want to look there? Several years ago, no, I guess it was about 2 years ago, 2 or 3. We were going to have the Startup Resource Center, which was a way to sort of address these questions. The Startup Resource Center would be a starting point if you're trying to form a startup or a small business in the greater Vegas area. It was inspired by some of the things that I heard from people in the downtown project days. They would say, well, when I got here, they told, hey, come to Vegas and start your company and this and that. When I got here, I was left to my own devices. Not everybody said that, and even today, I spoke to people who were new to the area, and they said, somebody told me to go to Blackfire. I don't even know what that is. They mentioned a few names of people. Like, do I have to go? Or who are these people? So there's a little bit of okay, you're here, good luck. And then, what is that expression? You wash your hands of it. Maybe that's the drawing part. Like, okay, you're here, good luck. So I always treated that as like the last mile left to chance. So the SRC was going to convert that into the first mile of a journey into some sort of entrepreneurial innovation. And that meant like, here's what you need to know and where it is and who to talk to and vetted services and so on. I think that's still missing. So I don't know if the Right to Start and or the America the Entrepreneurial efforts are suggesting such things at a local level. Obviously, local makes more sense. Yeah, we'll see. So as you can see mentioned across the corresponding websites, which I have linked to, references to the importance, the importance, I wrote the important, the importance of entrepreneurship abound, right? Entrepreneurs, small businesses, they're the drivers of economic success and employment and so on. And it is somewhat encouraging to see this highlighted. Sometimes people only, I'm not going to name names, but their initials are GEA, are looking at big established companies as drivers of economic diversity and are maybe backing off the notion of entrepreneurialism, which, as is so often the case in Nevada, does not seem to be a cohesive messaging strategy. Because does this fit like, oh, maybe startups are, but we are launching into America the entrepreneurial, Nevada the entrepreneurial, the right to start. Should we pay attention to those things? We really want big companies to move their employees to Vegas and fulfill those economic diversification agenda items. Maybe. I'm speculating. I've been reading more books and articles around this topic in general from the so-called community building perspective. And remember, if you've never heard me say this before, or remember if you do, if you have, building communities is sort of a sloppy use of language, but it is something you will hear. Even if communities are more emergent, you create the circumstances for communities to emerge and flourish. How do you build a community? You buy people lunch, I guess. There may be a return to entrepreneurship driven in part by the emergence of AI, either as a part of the startup workforce. Hey, now I don't need to hire anybody. I can just work by myself with some artificial intelligence tools doing who knows what. Or as part of the reason talented humans are finding themselves unemployed and thus entrepreneurial. Either way, the terrain may indeed be shifting. We'll be there. To reiterate my stance on top-down drive, I really believe fundamentally that entrepreneurs and innovators need to have direct input, oversight, certainly awareness of their ecosystem and its various moving parts, basically the government parts and the awareness of the capital access situations. Some parts of an ecosystem are just the way they are, or they're very slow to change. So these larger efforts will hopefully enable awareness and may encourage entrepreneurs to grab the reins, so to speak, in their local startup scenes. It's another term I'm not fond of, but you will hear that as well. Startup scene, startup community. I think the reason I don't care for these terms is they kind of set up expectations. Oh, do you have a startup community? What does that really mean? What do you mean when you say that? Oh, did you build your startup community? Does it come in an IKEA box? Do I get the little Allen wrench thing? And no. Final section. What can we do here? And by the way, so all the links and everything I've mentioned today, these should be the beginning of keeping up to date on these things or keeping an eye on them, which I will do, which you should do if you're entrepreneurial or innovative or both. So just sort of doing a quick survey of what we got going on, because I don't know if these things receive much attention. Our local press, our local media outlets, certainly our content creators that are influencing people to come to Vegas. And apparently, according to a survey from the LVCVA, the Convention and Visitors Authority, tourists visiting Vegas do consume social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, among others, perhaps. Video productions showing off different aspects of the greater Vegas area from a tourism or visitor perspective are useful. So that's nice. That means that nobody actually talks about the startups, the small businesses, unless you're a restaurant or a bar. You're kind of on your own to get the word out. But yeah, so these are some starting points. This is not a comprehensive collection of links and resources. Somebody should really work on that and call it innovatefornevada.org. You'll hear about that later on the Innovate for Vegas channel at some point. But these will be interesting discussion items for those in the next roundtable cohort. I mentioned that cohort 1 had been a counterpart to the study performed statewide on the entrepreneurial ecosystem, which relied on warm introductions and old data and a few other issues to arrive at a fairly generic set of conclusions and recommendations. Now, this is not to diminish the efforts of the study drivers, Mo Collins and her company at the time. We did have Mo Collins as an early interview guest on this very audio program way back when. I just have to wonder what the actual goals were of that document. What was that? What was Mo Collins and her consultancy? What were they paid to do? What were they looking for? Was there motivated reasoning in there? Were they were these needs and goals dictated from EDON and or LVGEA? Like, prove this conclusion with their study? Is that something that happens? Maybe. At any rate, the roundtable experiment was educational in that context. The importance of bottom-up comprehension of the systems in place and their motion is essential. Most writing about ecosystems and communities within them focusing on startups and small businesses will say exactly that. Involve the entrepreneurs and the innovators directly, right? Don't try to tell entrepreneurs and innovators what to do, because they have a different mindset. That should be embraced, not necessarily controlled or herded. Some of this community building and maybe even economic development space, some in the community building and economic development space will say loudly that startups and small businesses are two different things, and they are correct, except that there is some overlap. So sometimes they are not correct. And I have said a few times that there is enough in common so that one group should not shun the other. You know, if I'm starting a software company that may not exactly have much in common with a food truck business, but there is a lot in common with the food truck business. So we should be aware of how we can help each other. And then the parts that are totally different, that's fine. You know, if we're really being pedantic about that, your startup is not the same as some other startup. Maybe my startup is radically different from your startup. Doesn't mean we can't collaborate at a ecosystem level, like what's working and what isn't, what things are missing for your startup or what things are missing for mine. Maybe that would help other people too, especially those coming up next. I believe drawing thick lines and putting up tall fences, these are not productive pursuits. These do happen in Greater Vegas, unfortunately. There are common interests, common obstacles, and maybe diverse ideas that reach across the lines and over those fences. We can avoid ongoing silo building in Greater Vegas, if we somehow agree that collaboration is better than not, even though it may not be completely useful in every situation. So again, you may have some things that there's no commonality or very little, or maybe there can be some interactions around particular verticals. Oh, you're building a software startup in the healthcare area. Step this way. But other more cross-functional collaboration, also valuable. So don't be so quick to say that you're not like me and what you're doing is not like what I'm doing. So therefore what? It's not completely useful in every situation, but it could be, and it's better to find out. How would you know if you don't have those conversations? So let's work on the comms part. I'm giving up on our local media. Our local press is old school and is overly focused on government and government drama and the classic crime and politics. Is that the same thing? Which buildings are being torn down, which other buildings are being constructed. They're old school journalists. They're not really geared for talking about the startup scene. I've referred to this before in episode 85, one of my favorites of this audio program, the history of Silicon Valley, which so many places would like to emulate. We're going to be the next Silicon Valley. Vegas has been right in there. Silicon Valley was formed long before there was an internet. So they were printing newspapers with headlines on the front page about the startups and the small business developments and the ecosystem and the different parts of the Silicon Valley and what was going on where and who was doing what. And we don't do that here. Finally, final point, final section. We're getting there. Finally, one of the areas we looked at in our first roundtable cohort was identifying metrics and how we could measure them to determine how our ecosystem was and is functioning, and maybe how we could fix it or make it better. How do we know if we don't know where to measure and how? Various economic development entities, I have mentioned several, there are more, including the new NEDA, which I did mention, Economic Developers Association, look at various metrics and publish their studies. Often they are based on population surveys, maybe interview. I don't know if NEDA is going to do this, I assume, but yeah. So it could be the Office of Economic Development. It could be some other related entities at UNLV. So under an academic umbrella, it could be in a public-private partnership, evaluating economies and economic development. It could be city, county, and state economic development people. The list goes on. So when they take study, or not, when they publish studies, they're often taking surveys, population surveys, maybe interviews, economic indicators, population dynamics, and so on. So, okay, it would be profoundly interesting to be a part of the data capture and analysis, looking through the lenses of actual entrepreneurs and innovators rather than selecting pseudo random groups and so on. When I say warm introductions, what I mean is you will often see, and it's not a secret, oh, we started with this person and we asked them to recommend, can you introduce us to two more, or, point to two more people to have a conversation with, and maybe survey and interview and so on. And you just continue doing that. So you end up with a collection of people who, at least 1 or 2 degrees away, they know each other already. So you're not getting a random population sample, you're getting a warm introduction sample. So there are all kinds of biases in there. This was the case with the study that I mentioned from a couple of years ago. So I rarely refer to that anymore. I just let that sit. There's nothing particularly wrong with it, but there were those issues to consider. So when flipping through that survey, the 100-page statewide and then county-focused document, it is important to realize that the survey population was not random. Maybe we might compare results across the many variants and see what comes of it. The existing studies, the new, I like to call it a rolling introspection. So we should be able to find out from people what's getting better, what's getting worse, and so on. It's another approach to assessing the current state of affairs with our ecosystem. It's one way to do it. So we shall see. But so that's a quick rundown on the entrepreneurial net, or the entrepreneur net, and connections, communications, and collaborations. Let's see what happens. And maybe some of these organizations or efforts or nodes on the graph, maybe they will be helpful, maybe they'll be useful, maybe they're just smoke and or mirrors. We'll find out. Let's find out together. That's where I'm going to leave it for today on April 10th, 5:57 p.m. Yipes. Have a good weekend, or whenever you're listening to this, have a good week. Have a nice day. Continue your entrepreneurial innovation journey, and consider being a part of the Genius Roundtable Cohort 2. Take care now. Bye-bye.